All right, thank you very much, Ibrahim then Hamidu, for that background report. And we'll quickly begin our introductions. And I'll start from here in the studio where we have the National President of the National Association of Cattle Dealers, Processors, and Marketers of Nigeria, Alhaji Ilyasu Bulama. Thank you very much, Alhaji, for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we have also been joined from our Jos studio in Plateau State by Professor John Wade, Pioneer Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Plateau, Secretary, Implementation Committee, National Livestock Transformation Committee in Plateau State. Professor Wade was also the Director, General Research, Documentation, and Strategic Planning, Plateau State, between 2015 and 2023. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Prof, to Good Morning Nigeria.
Okay, that's Professor Wade. We will get back to Professor Wade in a short while. Let's begin our conversation from right here in the studio. And Alhaji Ilyasu Bulama is, of course, with us. And Alhaji, I'd like to ask you, first of all, what this new Ministry of Livestock means to, the cattle dealers, processors, and marketers of Nigeria. What exactly? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, we are very happy to have this ministry because a long time ago, when we were in Ministry of Agri, Foodstuff and Livestock together, livestock sector is neglected. Most of the projects done by Ministry of Agriculture, they are mainly concerned about crop production, but they do less in livestock sector. So looking at it in that angle, now that we have Ministry of Livestock, whose mandate is just to concentrate on livestock, we hope there will be a progress in livestock production, processing, marketing, and even pasture production. The main cause of problem in Nigeria is as a result of the herders moving around looking for pasture to graze their cattle. What we are expecting from this new ministry, the grazing reserves that are available, the cattle routes that are there, they should be existing. And where there is grazing reserve, there is need to have let's say, industrial borehole that will be used to grow grasses so that people around the area will not move in from their area to another area. It means if the ministry will be able to achieve this, there will be no more movement from one place to another by the pastoral. The one living in Taraba State will remain in Taraba State, one in Kano State will remain in Kano, one in Jigawa will remain in Jigawa, the Borno man will remain in Borno because they have the grazing reserves, and the grasses are available for them to feed their cattle. So they will not carry their cattle from Borno to Kogi, to Kwara, to Ibadan, to Enugu and other places. Those who are living in Enugu and Kwara, the governors also will apply same. There are places that are meant for grazing. Let them utilize them. If they want to introduce a ranch farming in their states, it will help them also to keep the herders in their environment, and new herders will not come in. This will give us opportunity to know if somebody is coming from another country, because the one that is in Jigawa remain in Jigawa. If we see any other new faces that is not from Jigawa, a question mark will be asked, where are you from and why are you here? We know if you are in Kwara, there is similar thing in Kwara. Why leaving Kwara to Jigawa, or why are you leaving Jigawa to Kwara?
But I also know that some of the cattle, are peculiar to some regions, even as it is now. Those coming from outside the country, you can identify them from those that are, bred locally.
They are not identifiable.
Oh,
They
they're not
are
identifiable?
yes, because you can't identify them. What you have in Cameroon, you see them in Adamawa and Taraba. What you have in Jigawa, Borno, you see them in Niger and Chad. So it's not easy to identify them by the species of the cows.
Yes.
So the only way you can identify is the people who follow them. Yes.
All right. But from what you have said with your opening remarks, clearly, in spite of this separation from the Ministry of Agric, pulling out livestock development, there still needs to be that handshake across both ministries. Whether it is to ensure that there is peaceful coexistence between the farmers and the herders, or for mutually beneficial a relationship. But what should it be, that relationship between both ministries now?
There should be, because a farmer is a farmer. Whether you are a crop farmer or a livestock farmer, if you produce crop, you need livestock. If you produce livestock, you need crops. So there is no way we can say because livestock ministry is created that we don't have business with Ministry of Agriculture. We have. Some of the feed we are using in cattle feeds, like corn now, human beings consume corn and it's also used for animal feeding. Go to poultry, go to sheep and goat, even the cow. So we are always together. What I'm saying is we have less consideration in the other area, but now we have to have more consideration because their duty is to take care of the livestock. You cannot expect the Minister of Livestock to be talking about how to go and do tomato, yam, rice, and what have you.
He has to focus now.
He has to focus on livestock only. So that is what we are saying, that yes, now the livestock sector is going to develop. Look at it, like the dairy aspect of farming we are doing locally. Our Fulani men who carry Prada Nono moving around, with this livestock, it will be upgraded. Instead of their cow that is giving them maybe 20 liters daily, with the new method of insemination and other things, they will be able to get cows that will give them 50 liters to 40 liters daily, which improve their production. And with the land population we have, with the cattle we have and goats, we don't expect Nigeria to export milk from any other country. We are to produce and export it out because we have the place to do the production, we have the stock on ground. So what we expect the ministry, if it should concentrate in this angle and the processing angle, so that from Nigeria we can now start exporting our product, both the dairy product and the meat, and some other cattle byproduct.
All right.
Yes, because the impression, the common impression now when we hear of livestock ministry is that it's all about cattle. It's all about, the cows and all that. And you've also talked about a major, objective for setting up this ministry, apart from to, curb, the grazing, habits now, and of course to curtail movement of cattle and all that. What other benefit are you expecting, and what other things are you envisaging that this ministry will do to position this sector properly?
What we are expecting from this ministry, the major one is it will create job opportunity to millions of people. Because if you look at the livestock sector, from poultry to cattle business, if the ministry came in and empowered people in encouraging them to produce more people will get job. Because by the time, I don't think if people are into livestock production in 1 to 2 years, they may not like to even be offered with any civil service work. Because what they will be earning from what they are doing in the business is more than what they will be paid in civil service. So apart from that, government will generate revenue, more revenue will come in. You know, if you go to cattle market in Nigeria, on daily basis you see trailers moving with cattle from one angle to another. As they are moving, they pay revenue from where they load and where they upload to the government. But there are linkages where government is not getting the revenue right. If they are getting it right, the revenue government will generate from this livestock business is not as much. Government will do a lot from it. But in this association, National Association of Cattle Dealers, Processors and Marketers, we are trying to show them that, okay, this is where we have seen the linkages and this is how it will be dealt with. Because it's not good. You know, it's good to pay tax. It is from that money we are paying that government will get money to do some other things. Instead of that thing to reach government, some individuals are forgetting it. Business continues, government is suffering, while there are angles that government will make money.
Okay, I think we should just put you on hold for a moment. We'll come back, to understand better, what are some of the challenges, bedeviling, livestock processing and marketing.
All right, let's introduce Professor John Wade to the conversation. Prof, I'm sure you've listened to Alhaji Bulama, who is the national president of the Association of Cattle Dealers, Processors and Marketers in Nigeria. Now, from your understanding, some people have said the new ministry could struggle with funding. And the reason is that the budget of the traditional Ministry of Agriculture may have to now be split between both ministries. And that may not help in harnessing the potential as much as it should be to produce the results that are desired by both stakeholders and government. In your opinion, do you think that there will be other ways of driving funding for this new ministry?
Again, thank you very much and good morning, Nigeria. I've listened attentively to Alhaji Ilyas Bulama in his introductory remark, and he has made quite a number of good comments with respect to the issue. We all appreciate that the coming on board of the Ministry of Livestock, to me, is something long overdue, without prejudice to the fact that some people have had cause to question why a ministry when there is a Department of Livestock. But you see, this is about building strong institutional and legal framework. With a ministry coming on board, I think it's a commendable thing, and Mr. President should be commended for that. Now, any administration that sets up this kind of thing, an institution, it is expected that it will be followed with willpower. And I believe that Mr. President is out to resolve this issue. The Ministry for Livestock Development can fall back on the initiative that some of us started in Nigeria way back in 2016, when this issue of farmer header crisis and conflict came up. The government, particularly Plateau State government, when the former governor and now Senator Simon Bako Lalong took the initiatives along with other state governors like Nasarawa and Adamawa to set up the NLTP, which the National Economic Council worked on and ensured that it came on board. Now, this NLTP clearly define the 6 pillars that will promote the development of livestock. And this include, like Alhaji Bulama in the introductory remark rightly alluded, you have the issue of economic benefits, conflict resolution, humanitarian reliefs. Now, with all this, governments at the state, the federal government then under the NLTP, make sure that the project is cascaded to the state. So at the state level, you have the State Livestock Transformation Plan, where, as you introduced me, I was the secretary in the state. And we did quite a lot of things, starting with pilot projects. Fundings were provided. We had synergy with other ministries like the Ministry of Finance, Incorporated, MOFI, apart from the contributions and efforts of the government. So I want to believe that with Mr. President doing this, there will be adequate funding for that, because funding is very critical. And then overcoming the bureaucratic bottlenecks. And that is why the institutional and legal framework coming on board in form of the Ministry of Livestock is a welcome development, rather than being a subdivision and, like it is commonly alluded, that as a department in the ministry, you hardly get the attention it gets. Now, with good funding, there are lots of things to be done. The pilot project we started on the plateau at Wase, we went to a grazing reserve because we have a number of grazing reserves. And we identified 2 of them, Kanam and Wase. We started with Wase, where we established a 30-hectare ranch. We were able to put quite a number of infrastructure there, even though work is still ongoing. Try to build some silos and other things, and pasture development too. Because one thing about livestock, contrary to what people believe, is beyond rearing of cattle. It's beyond rearing of poultry. You can go into this livestock development and concentrate or specialize in forage production, just producing grasses that are nutritious, beneficial to the animals. So with this establishment and adequate funding, I think a lot of things will be done. Nigeria is never short of policies. There are very good policies on livestock development. It is a question of willpower. And good enough, I want to believe that with the Minister for Livestock Development, who is also into the program, he's not just coming in as an amateur. It's a question of being focused, identifying the set objectives for which the livestock is meant, and then following diligently. We expect synergy with other ministries, no doubt. Ministry of Agriculture will have to come into play. But as you know too, all over the world, governance is predicated on humanitarian services. Governance is predicated on poverty relief. So with the coming on board of the Ministry of Livestock, I want to see a very strong synergy too with the Ministry of Humanitarian Relief and Poverty Reduction. And in that way, we'll be able to achieve one of the 6 pillars of the National Transformation Plan, which is economic benefit. The value chains in livestock production is enormous. It's enormous, even if you take cattle alone. But as you know, since livestock has to do with animals, even we, on our part, I am a professor of aquaculture and fisheries management, we have fish ranching. And in fish ranching, there are lots of things that you can do. So I expect that livestock development that has come on board will go a long way in alleviating poverty, providing employment for the youth, but it's a question of being focused and getting the right people who are committed to do that work. In that way, I don't think the minister should fail.
Professor Wade, thank you. I'd like to remain with you, but just to also indicate that we'll be joined by Dr. Saleh Mamale, former technical advisor to the Minister of Agriculture, in a short while. I quite understand, when you talk about what had happened in Plateau under, the immediate past governor, that Right Honorable Simon Bakola, along with the transformation, livestock transformation plan. Now that, a critical step has been taken, via the recommendation of the Implementation, Transformation Committee, of which you were the secretary. What kind of ministry, are Nigerians to expect? What is the nature of this ministry? Can you give us an insight?
The nature of the ministry, by common consent, by mandate, is to promote livestock development. And if it is to promote livestock development, we have to understand what is livestock. It has to do with all the forms of production of animals, different animals, not restricted to cattle, but you have sheep, you have poultry, and you have other products too. Now with this ministry, and if it is to rely on what I had earlier on said with respect to the NLTP 6 pillars, there are lots of things in terms of economic improvement on the economic well-being of the people, in terms of conflict resolution. One of the problems that has remained a recurring decimal in this country is this transhumance migration, where there are crises. But then we expect the ministry to go into very strong advocacy. Before we started on the plateau here, it took us about 2 years going into strong advocacy, making people to key into it, and disabusing their minds from believing that bringing the livestock on board is about rehabilitating the Fulanis or doing it for the Fulanis or moving every livestock to a particular place. Yes, like earlier on, Alhaji Bulama said, once you establish a ranch or hubs in different places in the state, you can easily mark where people can go in there and graze with massive growth of pasture there. So I expect them to go beyond just ordinary rearing, but to also go into a lot of sensitization for people to understand, for people to be able to key into it. You have to also understand the psychology of the migrant Fulanis who move about.
Yes, sorry to interject, Professor Wade. I'm sorry to interject. You talked about 6 pillars, and I asked the nature of the ministry. Are we going to have, departments that would cater for the 6 pillars independently within the ministry? That's what I'm asking. For instance, you have talked about, conflict resolution, revamping the conflictual aspect within this sector, which has to do with grazing. And the new minister himself, talked about it. His plans, to address that squarely. In fact, that's one of his basic plans. So, how might this ministry work now? Are we going to have departments that cater for each of the 6 pillars that you have recommended?
As a ministry, as a strong institution, the legal framework will naturally define different departments. Because, for example, the 6 pillars I have mentioned, like economic development, conflict resolution, we expect the ministry to have that, where you have specialists that will address problems as they arise, rather than just when crises or issues arise, you start looking for different people. So I expect that the ministry, in building itself or building the organogram of the ministry, should be able to have all these different departments to be able to handle most of these problems.
Wade, thank you very much for your remarks so far. Let's get back here in the studio to Alhaji Bulama. Now the ministry is created. Of course, some would say the best way to start is to start. But what should be the priorities of the minister and indeed the ministry at inception?
Yeah, the priority of this ministry will focus on how to upgrade the ranches we have by using the industrial borehole, which will resolve the issue of complete resolution between herders and farmers. Because if they are having grazing reserves with grasses year-round, I don't think they will leave the grazing reserve and find themselves in somebody's farmland. anybody found in anybody's farmland, okay, he don't have any reason that he don't have where to graze. But if you look at it now, like now in northern state, rain have stopped. If you go there in next 2 months, hardly you see anything an animal can feed on.
Yep.
So how do you expect the animal to survive that long duration till next rainy season? And even if the rainy season comes, it is not as the rain started. It will take more than a month before grasses will grow up. So something is supposed to be done within this gap to keep them in that particular
Just like
area.
you have all year round farming.
Farming.
You should
So
also
it should be
have
same in
feeds.
pasture production in the grazing reserves so that the people will remain in their area. This will help us to know how many cattle do we have in every senatorial district. How many cattle rearers, how many cattle farmers, how many sheep and goat do we have? We can get the census, we can get the data of the producers because they are in one place, they are not moving. But if they are moving around, it's not easy to get the data. And even the general, I remember long ago, they get what they call jangali in Hausa, jangali da haraji. Those things they used to go and count how many sheep you have, how many goats you have donkey, horse, and what have you. And you face some other things. They go to your place, give them vaccine, treat your animals time to time. The veterinary used to do that. So if the ministry can do this, this is the first thing to do. By the time they have enough feed, they will give a quality meat, they will give a quality milk. By the time we get this product right, then the economy will grow. One, we'll go into milk production and exports. The meat aspect, Saudi was in Nigeria, seeking Nigeria to give them meat. If we get a standard abattoirs, which were now lacked in the country, so at least if we can get a standard abattoir in every senatorial district in Nigeria, we will be able to export meat to any other country in the world.
Okay, thank you, Elijah. Again, let's return to Professor Wade in Kaduna, I beg your pardon, Dr. Salim Momale. Dr. Salim Momale, thank you for joining us on the program. Of course, Dr. Momale, former technical advisor to the Minister of Agriculture. It's always a pleasure to have you. I'm sure you've been listening into our conversation so far. And, Victor had teed off with a question on priorities, but even before the service delivery begins, the structure would have to be, there will have to be a structure. You will have to have personnel driving the structure. Yes, we now have a new minister. He's been inaugurated and all that. As an advisor, you're still an advisor, what should be the foundational steps now, that will kickstart the ministry? Because the ministry have yet to start. At the moment, there's no, I'm sure they're still squatting under the Ministry of Agriculture.
Okay. Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you so much to the Nigerian Television Authority again for rising up to this challenge of engaging with Nigerians and creating the awareness that is much needed. And I think you are doing one of the big jobs that the Federal Ministry of Livestock Development have to do now, and that is creating the awareness, exposing the opportunities in the sector, and trying to ramp up support, for the various sections of the Nigerian society so that they can key into what is being planned. So thank you very much. And I think your background information to the prelude to this discussion, as well as the contributions by the two earlier speakers, have really addressed quite a number of issues, and thank you so much to them for bringing that out. Importantly, I think, is Mr. President has done the job. It's now left for the stakeholders in the industry to now take it up, work along it, support the institution, and ensure the success. Like all the earlier speakers as well as the background and many other discussions have highlighted, there is huge potentials in this sector for the Nigerian people. The opportunities, are numerous, just like in many other sectors. And this is what we need, or what Nigeria requires at this critical period of time, when we are really trying to rebuild the economy, create a new focus, and then deepen our democratic development. So these are very important institutional and administrative frameworks that have been put in place. Now, for the Ministry of Livestock Development, I think happily there are two key functional departments in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security that will serve as the initial anchor of the new ministry. And these are the departments of Animal Husbandry Services and the Department of Veterinary and Pest Control Services. These departments happily are manned by highly trained professionals with broad experiences in the livestock industry. And these two departments have institutional memories of what has been transpiring. They have records of all the policies and programs since, like the Department of Veterinary Services, even before the colonial Nigeria's independence. So there is huge array of intellectual resources at the disposal of the new ministry. The second one is we have research institutions and other agencies that are within the former Ministry of Agriculture that can easily move to the new Ministry of Livestock Development. And here I'm talking about institutions like the Nigerian Institute of Animal Science, the Nigerian Animal Production Research Institute, NAPRI, which is located at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. We also have the National Veterinary Research Institute, one of the foremost not only in Nigeria but throughout Africa, that has specialized in the production of vaccines for the management of various epidemic diseases, and which have made numerous contributions in animal diagnostic services. And also, within other institutions of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, such as the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, there are quite a number of specialists and expertise. And of course, we have the various universities. They have faculties of veterinary medicine, faculties of animal science, departments of animal science all over the country, and many colleges of animal production, colleges of animal health, colleges of animal nutrition, and related professionals that the new ministry can easily draw from and create a very robust human resource capacity. Again, innovation, extension are critical sectors, and getting in to understand the various dynamics of the value chain developments. And here the ministry should capitalize on other arms of the former Ministry of Agriculture, the extension services, and other areas, as well as the modern technology. I think they should all look outwards, look at the various other ministries and institutions that exist within the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and draw the required expertise, create the needed departments that will drive innovation, that will be technology-driven, that will, mobilize Nigerians and engage the private sector, that will be able to ramp up both public and private sector capital, private and public sector financial resources to support the sector. And I think this is the challenge before the Honorable Minister, and I hope he's going to pick that up. Like earlier speaker said, his experience in the field, he has broad national experience and expertise in various sectors of the Nigerian economy, not only the livestock, and I believe that network will greatly support him. And happily, I think in the wisdom of Mr. President, he had also deployed a permanent secretary who is a veterinarian, who has the needed requisite experience, to ramp up the professionals in the sector to come on board. So I think the two formative departments, the Department of Animal Husbandry Services and the Department of Veterinary and Pest Control Services, and other agencies, the National Quarantine Services, the Institute of Animal Science, should all rally up around the minister. Get this ministry on board, and then engage Nigerians, ramp up private sector investments, engage the local producers, and then we will see a new drive, a new, appetite to transform this sector and make it what Nigerians expect.
All right, Dr. Momale, thank you very much, but I'll stick with you for now. Yes, you are talking about the priorities, what the priorities should be, but I'm thinking let's be a bit more definitive. Would you like to set a target for the new ministry? And if you would do, let's say for the next 2 years, would your target include being able to balance the interests of farmers, herders, and industry players to ensure a unified approach to livestock development?
I think, like you mentioned, if we are to look at it, we will say that the Honorable Minister have a Herculean task ahead, and we can say we would set a target of, let's say, the first 3 formative months, the next 6 months, the next 1 year, and the next 2 years. For me, this is how I look at it. Within the next 3 months, we expect to see a robust framework, robust institutional framework, wide-scale engagement, particularly with the various state governments, being very active in engaging the state governors, particularly those states that do not have, ministries of livestock development. If the Honorable Minister will be able to engage the governors within the next 3 months to support the federal initiative by creating ministries of livestock development or animal resources within their states, ramping up a lot of professionals within the sector to join the drive of the Honorable Minister, getting all the departments in the new ministry to be functional, as well as establishing the broad linkages that Professor Wade has earlier mentioned with the other agencies and ministries of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other regional players, as well as the international development partners. I think this is a huge task for the minister within the next 3 months and the ministry as a whole. Within the next 6 months, we need to see very robust and practical programs, hands-on, where we will begin to see the deployment of innovative technologies. We'll begin to see, actions on the ground, engaging with our local breeders, our local producers, the Poultry Association of Nigeria, the Mieti Allah, the Sheep and Goats Breeders Association of Nigeria, all of them coming on board. We have a lot of potentials in the micro livestock, in the swine sector. All of this should not be neglected. And of course, the other aspect of the value chain, which the president just mentioned regarding, the abattoirs, the milk processing, milk production facilities, all of this. Within the next 6 months, we need to see robust, hands-on, practical, interventions that the minister wants to see. Within the next 1 year, we will expect to begin to see some of these dividends, beginning to see some of the, pasture fields growing, beginning to see some of the, feedlots for fattening of livestock. Most of our livestock are malnourished. And when you bring them on board and fatten them, you add a lot of value addition within a very short period of time. We begin to see the deployment of the extension service delivery mechanisms, reaching out to producers, reaching out to various stakeholders. And we begin to see a lot of private sector investors that are coming into the industry. And then we are already beginning to see, maybe a database of young professionals, our young people that are unemployed, who have been mobilized by the ministry to begin to see prospects in investing in this industry. And then we'll begin to see collaborative frameworks for the management or coordination of pastoralism or pastoral mobility, linkages with other regional countries across, particularly the West and Central African sub-region, very strong partnership and networks and collaborations that are addressing many of these challenges. Well, that's what we want to see. And by the next 2 years, we want to begin to see that improved productivity, more quality meat in our markets, more milk in our schools, in our homes, in the markets. We begin to see a greater level of peaceful and harmonious coexistence between our farmers and our herders. We'll begin to see the emergence of integrated, livestock production schemes that integrate crops and livestock. People living and then beginning to see increased productivity along both the crop and the livestock sectors, and higher level of public sector support, more robust engagements with the media, and all of these promotions taking place within the next 2 years.
All right, Doctor, Dr. Momale, thank you. Again, let's allow you to take a breather and we'll come back to you. But let's also, before we come back to speak with Alhaji, Professor John Wade, I'm just wondering, okay, so while Professor Wade comes on set, let me just pose the question to you, since you raised that issue of reserve management, and one of the areas is, to address the conflictual aspect, in the grazing rights. Now, the recommendation of the committee is to resuscitate some of those existing grazing, reserves and all that. So how might this help? What kind of, management technique or management style or technology can be applied to assuage, the feelings of those, who responded, negatively, to this same, idea when it was initially muted under President Muhammad Buhari?
Well, it's because things sometimes happens and people will not understand. It is when it's fast, then they will begin to realize that, yes, if to say we have adopted this thing, it will bring a change. Long ago, if to say this idea is adopted and used, I think we will have make a good progress in terms of peace between herders and farmers. But they look at it in one side. It's just like where Buhari was in government. Buhari is a planning man. He introduced the program. They are thinking that he is doing it for planning people. A cattle business or livestock production is not a business of planning man only. Anybody can do it. And it's the business that can generate income to both individuals and the government. If to say for that long we are into this pasture production, some people may not even go into livestock production. They will produce the pasture, sell to the livestock owners to feed their cattle and make their money. Even students in school can grow a pasture in their school and sell it and make their money in school while they are in school to support them. But it was not understood very well. I'm sure if school will engage students to grow pasture, do some irrigation in the school land, people will be buying it because it's needed. Somebody was telling me from Sudan that if they can get a grass, they will pay you with cattle because they need that grass. Same thing in Nigeria, they lack the pasture. So if they can get grass, they can pay you with their cattle or with their sheep and goats. So if we can go into pasture production for those who are not into the cattle business or who are not in rearing production, they can go into pasture and make money. So the production aspect of this business is the grass. If we don't have feed, no production. So that is why we miss it from beginning. But now if adopted and the grazing reserve where it's not only to get the reserve, they are there already for long ago. But how can we manage them is by using those industrial boreholes so that government can, even if they can put some little charges for maintenance of those.
Yes, but this reserves will entail land acquisition, where you don't have the reserve, like you said, state governments. But you know that there were, at the time, state government, some states, were reluctant to even release their land. So what I'm saying, what kind of technology, what kind of method now, can we apply? Can the new ministry now apply, to convince those, other states to buy into this? Or is there a hybrid?
Okay, now, you see, Kwara State Governor, when the Committee on Livestock Implementation Committee was doing their 2 days program in Presidential Villa, said they will have a meeting with 19 northern state governors on this issue, which they did it in Kaduna. And in other states, like let's assume Enugu State, the governor is interested in doing ranches in that area. So if Enugu State government would like to do a ranching in Enugu State, so they have seen the importance of that particular things in the area. Other states too will emulate from what the governor is trying to do in Enugu. We have Fulanis all over. Some Fulanis were born, even their grandparents were born in that particular areas. They are with them. So, but the certificate you are saying, the C of O of the land, government, if government is ready to do it, they can do it. And after they do it, the people who remain in that particular state, they will be making their progress by getting revenue from those people. And the people also will produce more because they have fees. They don't have fear that somebody will attack them. They don't have fear that they will go and damage somebody's farm and quarrel will start. So this is the only thing. Some other governors will get to know it when some started. Not all of them will start at
once. Okay, I wanted, Victor, I wanted Professor Wade, if he's there, to also weigh in on this matter, because Plateau started something in this regards, during the tenure of Right Honorable Simon Bakolalong. Professor Wade.
Thank you very much, and it was also nice listening to Dr. Momale. He has really provided some good responses to issues that the ministry should be addressing. From our own experience, and just to follow up what Bulama was saying, education, strategic communication is very, very important in getting the buy-in of the people. The advocacy you have to promote will involve bringing together the pastoralists, the headers, and the farmers too, because they have to work in synergy. Apart from that, on the issue of land, well, for states that have gazetted grazing reserves, automatically that belongs to the state government. Although you know that many of these reserves have stayed for over 50, 60 years since independence without being utilized. And you find a lot of people settling within. Even then, if you are going to promote this thing, you are not to dislodge them. And that was one of the initiatives and confidence building we had to take in Plateau when we started the model ranching. We allayed their fears because they were told that they were going to be dislodged, whereas the government is out to empower people. And let us also be mindful that responsibility of government is not necessarily or absolutely going into business. I don't see the Ministry of Livestock being a company, but one that will facilitate, will encourage. Livestock development is something that you need to bring in the private sectors, encourage them. Government can provide the enabling environment. For example, from the experience that we had in Plateau, when we started with the modest ranching, we didn't start on a large scale. We started on a modest ranching, and by the first year, we succeeded in breeding pasture, very good ones. And by the second year, it was massive. The production was very impressive. Now, from there, you can now cascade it to the other local governments or areas. Arrangement where there are no government reserves with respect to land. Again, you have to go into the buy-in of the people. I recall in part of our plans to introduce the model ranching in the northern zone, because the desire is to cascade it to the different senatorial zones. We came to the northern zone where there is no gazetted grazing reserve, and we identified a place, called the community, spoke with them, and they were willing to give out their land so that they can be part of that program. So I think education, sensitization, bringing the farmers along, the NGOs, CSOs have to be brought on board. And then identifying a hub where you can now practicalize these things. Dr. Momale had set out a 2-year agenda, which I totally agree with, because people want to see results now. We are almost 2 years into this administration. We have barely 2 years. But if in the next 3 months and 6 months constructive engagements are made and the hubs are started and people start seeing results, they will key in immediately. More so that the value chain involved in the livestock production is so enormous. As said in my earlier opening remarks, that you don't even have to go into the livestock production. You can decide to concentrate on production of grasses. And these grasses, we have had research institutions that have produced high quality, nutritious grasses. There are those grasses that are very good for milk production. There are those that are very good for beef production. And Nigeria, with a population of over 250 million, I think the opportunities are limitless.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Wade. We would go on a short break so that when we return, we can begin to head towards the finishing line for this conversation. Please stay with us. Come back. We thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Let's get back to Kaduna, where Dr. Salim Omale has been waiting. Now, Dr. Omale, one of the biggest challenges that have been identified by sector players in livestock development is the lack of modern training for farmers. And so I'll be asking, how much should the ministry invest in trying to train farmers and equip them with the skills that are requisite to boost productivity and profitability, particularly?
Thank you very much for taking it from this angle. In everything that humans do, capacity is central to its success or otherwise. And to develop the requisite capacity, you require a lot of training. You need equipment and materials and an enabling environment. Our traditional producers, not only in the livestock industry, but in any other sector, depend on what we often refer in the professional terms as indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge are acquired, tested, and tried over time, and they have been found, to be efficient. However, as societies and nations progresses, dynamics change, and this level of indigenous knowledge always adapt to some of these changes. Where there is supportive environment, supportive research, and upgrading of skills and capacities, the indigenous knowledge will continue, to upgrade itself to meet the needs of existing generations. But what we found, not only in Nigeria, but in many parts of Africa, is the stagnation of indigenous knowledge. And therefore, those indigenous practices remain stagnated, notwithstanding the rapid environmental changes, the population rise, the developments of technologies in other parts of the world that makes our own indigenous knowledge inefficient in modern times. So unless many societies in Africa come to the realization that dependence on the ancient indigenous knowledge and practices are not sufficient to enable their current population live in contemporary times, they will continue to lag behind and suffer the effects, of climate change, globalization, innovative technologies, and many others. And over time, they will be pushed out of production, or their production will be so marginal that their livelihoods will become unsustainable. And this is where Nigeria, not only in the livestock sector, but in many other sectors, like in our traditional dyeing industry, like even in our farming practices, up to now, substantial segment of our agricultural population are dependent on indigenous knowledge, indigenous seeds. Many of these things that have very low level of productivity and which could not meet the current challenges of the local populations themselves, talk less of meeting the demands of the nation at large. And that's why Nigeria is a net importer of many other things that ordinarily it should have been self-sufficient, or even exporting to other climes. That is not to underrate the importance of some of the local indigenous knowledge that we have, or to undermine some of the local breeds and some of the animal genetic resources that we have, which we need to conserve and develop. So what we need, as you rightly say, is to develop capacities. To develop these capacities, we need the right knowledge, we need the right professionals, and we need the right supporting environment. What we have suffered in the past years was undue criticism of the indigenous production practices without focusing on those essential transformation and input that are needed to upgrade the productive potentials of these. And I do hope that the ministry will be able to recognize this, bring in the experts, bring in the international experiences into all of this, while not ignoring the local practices, the local resources that we have. We do not need to, say they are worthless or useless, but we need to systematically modernize and improve them through continuous development of skills, through introduction of adaptive technologies, adaptive equipments, and promoting the local fabrication of many of the equipment and materials that we require in the livestock sector, rather than strongly depending on the importation of some of the simple materials that we need, for example, in processing milk, in producing pasture, in conservation, and many other of these practices across the entire value chains. So what we need to do is, let us assemble our technicians. Let us bring in our researchers, put them together, let them work together with our local fabricators and our local production industries to produce the requisite equipment and materials that our headers, that our poultry producers, that our swine, our micro livestock producers, and those along the value chain require. As we are developing this, we are also developing innovative technology driven by ICT, extension service packages. So we also expect to see the ministry developing a livestock extension program that will be able to bring in all of this knowledge together, sensitize them, simplify them into local languages, the languages that producers can understand, the languages that transporters can understand, the language that traders like Alhaji Bulama and his team will understand, not the big technical jargons, in such a way that they will be able to apply this for our development.
Dr. Saleh Momale, thank you. As if you knew, I was going to ask Alhaji Bulama again the kind of help, the kind of support and interventions that precisely cattle breeders and processors and marketers would want. You said when you were hemmed in the Ministry of Agriculture that you were neglected. I know that agric farmers, were, they had robust incentives. Even in the past, you had the anchor borrowers, you had credit incentives, you have subsidized fertilizers, you have hybrid seeds, you have so much, going on for them. What would you be looking out for? What is the nature of interventions that you'll be expecting from the ministry?
Yeah, what we are expecting, I thank Dr. the last speaker.
Yes, Momale.
Mamale, he said very well, because we need training, and the training need to be done in a language that our producers, the farmers, will understand. Like he says, the drivers' language, we cannot, if you use the jargon as he said, they cannot understand. Because in this industry, majority of them didn't go to school like me. I didn't go to school.
No, you're speaking very well.
But I speak, but I didn't go to school much. So people like me are plenty. We need to get a language that will be simple and clear for them to understand what is required to do these things they want to do. So we need a breed of cattle that will give us, like those in dairy farming, that will give them a lot of milk. Then the fattening aspect of it, the feed and how to do the feed, the machines of feed formulation and processing, all those are needed. The machines that you use in belting your grass for keeping them for some period of time and what have you, all those things are needed from the ministry. The fund also for people to go into the production. when they are doing anchor borrower in rice production and other things, nobody was given anything to do anchor borrower on cattle or sheep and goat or any poultry production. So we need that one too. By the time we funded them, the processors, we need to have a modern abattoir, like I said, a mechanized abattoir in every senatorial zone. By the time we have this mechanized abattoir, our product will be good to go anywhere for export. Then more people will be employed in the process of doing it. With time, you can see that Nigeria is making money because they are now exporters, not importers.
You didn't talk about marketing. You didn't talk about
The marketing
yes,
aspect of it, madam, is you know, is when you do the production and processing, then you talk about the market.
because infrastructure. If you don't have good roads, you can't even ride.
It's true. It's true. We need that. We need infrastructures. Let's assume, you know, you will carry everything by road. But what we are trying to do, by the time we have this modern abattoir, instead of us to be carrying, let's say, a trailer load of cows from here to Lagos to Enugu and others, it's better we forget the processed meat, a tons of meat in a cold barn to Enugu to Lagos. It's more easier because the animals suffers along the road. When you take them and slaughter them, they lack something. But by the time you feed them here, they are complete, and you carry the product to that particular area, it will be more good.
I think that the problem there will be the problem of trust. Whether if I ask you to slaughter and bring, whether it will be complete.
No. What will happen is you order for cattle, tons of meat. What you see is a ton of meat.
A ton of meat.
Okay. I get that. Now let me quickly get to Professor John Wade. Now, Prof, we've been talking about the prospects of the new livestock ministry, but I think there are also challenges that we need to talk about. And one of it is water, which is a problem for both farming and livestock farming and then the traditional farming. And I'm just wondering what strategy the ministry can adopt to ensure sustainable water sources for livestock farming particularly.
Well, I think in any livestock breeding environment, when you are doing your survey, water is one of the important parameters that you have to look for. If there are problems of water supplies, then you have to devise a means. Of course, I know that before even going into that, you have to do some geological surveys to identify water points. We did that when we started with our ranching area. Identify. So in doing so, you provide boreholes in different areas. The ministry can also go into mini dam construction. The dam constructed there can also serve multipurpose uses, where apart from using it for feeding of the cattle, it can also be used by the crop farmers. And here you find the synergy that is expected to be built between the farmers. So building of dams are also very, very important where there is problem of water. And once you build dams, well engineered, well planned, that can hold water all year round, not seasonal dams, then you are as good as solving the problem substantially. And complementing it with boreholes, boreholes too will help in complementing the water supplies. In our own pilot program, we were able to build up to 3 boreholes, and these boreholes served particularly at the peak of the dry season when there was no water. So if government can go into that, they will also be seen to be playing the role of providing the enabling environment. And by the time other people come in and key in, whether private sector and other things, they can also make use of some of these facilities that are provided. Because when you make the water, the borehole or the dam in particular, it can serve many purposes. Apart from putting your fish, it will serve for pasture growing, the animals that are roaming around the ranching area will also have ready-made water. Because we have seen instances where in the course of migration or in the course of grazing, you find the cows feeding in one pasture land area here, and when it is time for them to drink water, they have to trek, or they have to move about 4 or 5 kilometers, take the water before coming back. We experienced that, and the best way of overcoming it was to build these boreholes. And where there are dams, because there are instances where in the area you will find dams, but the holding capacity of these dams may not be sufficient. And if we're able to identify all these ones, it's a question of bringing in the engineers, see how you can improve on the water holding capacity of the dam.
Professor Wade, thank you. We're quickly running out of time, so we'll just take a last question from Alhaji here, and then end up with Dr. Momale. Alhaji, quickly tell us, because you talked about ranching, and sometime in the 60s when Nigeria practiced ranching for the purposes of fattening, it didn't work. So how can this be made to work?
It will work because
Is this supposed to be government-driven or private sector-driven?
both government and private, because things are changing. You can't compare 60s and today's. Many people have seen the differences. So if we can go into ranching now, it will give a good result, because many people are doing fattening on their own. While they are doing fattening, they keep them in one place for some months, 3 to 4 months, feed them. So if they can do that, they will be able to go for the ranching. It will be more easier than the fattening they are doing, because this one is more cost, because everything they buy it and keep it in one place. But in case of ranch, grasses are available and water is available to do it.
Okay, let's get Dr. Momale. Yeah. Dr. Momale. Dr. Momale, I just wanted you to also share your perspective about ranching. What should be the nature of ranching now? Alhaji is saying that in the 60s, it's quite different from today. I agreed. But briefly, in say 60 seconds, what should be the nature of ranching that the new ministry should pursue?
Thank you very much. Practically speaking, not just about Nigeria, but most parts of sub-Saharan Africa, practice of intensive livestock production systems is quite a difficult and Herculean task. In the temperate regions of the world, as well as some of the Mediterranean areas, the climatic environments favors year-round growth of pasture resources, and with the high level of industrial development, with the high level of development in infrastructure and services, and efficient and functional infrastructure like electricity, high level of crop yields, particularly cereals that are used in the compounding of concentrate feeds, enable some of the most intensive production systems to take place. In emerging economies, not only in Nigeria but across the world, going into some of those systems of production is quite difficult, but not to say it is impossible. So there are private sector initiatives that can do that. What we are promoting and what we hope will be done is to promote the gradual, intensification of the local production systems to transform, rather than a totally natural resource dependent system, into a more system that integrates different aspects of feeds generation for the livestock production.
All right, Dr. Momale, time is up for us, and we've just had to go. Thank you very much for your time this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. We appreciate your contributions to the program. All right, Dr. Momale is a former technical advisor to the Minister of Agriculture. Let me also thank here in the studio Alhaji Ilyas Bulama, who is National President of the National Association of Cattle Dealers, Processors and Marketers of Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time on the program.
Thank you so much too.
I appreciate your contributions.
Thank you.
And finally, but by no means the least, let me thank Professor John Wade, Pioneer Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Plateau, and Secretary, Implementation Committee, National Livestock Transformation Committee in Plateau State, and he was also the Director, Research, Documentation, and Strategic Planning in Plateau State between 2015 and 2023. Thank you very much for being our company on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure.
For watching. I am Victor Azu. We'll see you again tomorrow.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdurrazak. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.